In September 2022, more than 100,000 Kyrgyz civilians clogged mountain roads, fleeing from Tajik artillery shells and raids. However, this 6-day-long war is merely another symptom of Central Asia's painful history of Soviet meddling, nationalism, terrorism, and water shortages, which have turned it into a tinderbox with potential for war. And with the outside powers that once kept the tinder from lighting ablaze unable or unwilling to continue, a spiraling conflict may be more likely than ever before. Central Asia is almost always on the periphery of maps. It is the western frontier of China, where dynasties and rulers expanded but just could never sinicize. It is the great expanse to the east of Persia that brought upon hordes of nomadic armies. It is where the frontiers of British India and Russia collided in a great game which saw its colonization. However, Central Asia is better thought of as the center of the world, the crossroads of Eurasia. Throughout history, trade routes between East and West joined here, including the ancient Silk Road and the modern Chinese Belt and Road Initiative. In addition, Central Asia is blessed with massive amounts of mineral resources. In particular, it contains more than 30% of the world's chromite, a promising material for rechargeable batteries. Control over these resources is becoming ever more important as the world moves towards battery-powered renewable energy. As such, Central Asia is quickly becoming one of the most strategically important regions in the entire world, and conflict would have profound ramifications on the world economy and risk dragging in nearby great powers. Modern tensions in Central Asia truly began with the Soviet policy of national territorial delimitation during the 1920s. To achieve their idea of socialism in a mostly underdeveloped area, the Soviets attempted to build up national identities within the Soviet Union. However, creating viable nation-states out of often bilingual and diverse nomadic or semi-nomadic people who often lacked an understanding of the Western idea of nationhood proved difficult. When asked for their ethnicity, many literally said Muslim. The republics born out of this policy were ethnically heterogeneous, with convoluted, enclave-filled borders that ignored geographic features, especially around the Fergana Valley, which contained most of the region's population and farmland. I mean, look at this enclave here, called Suk, which is an enclave in Kyrgyzstan controlled by Uzbekistan, populated by mostly Tajiks. Yeah, but it didn't really matter. These borders were usually just a sign or a rock on a mountain road. After all, they served mere symbolic or administrative purposes, as the nations were still part of the broader Soviet Union. They were never intended to form actual countries. The weakening and eventual collapse of Soviet authority in 1991 turned these symbolic borders hard. New fences and some of the longest border walls in the entire world were erected. Ethnic violence gripped the new fragile multi-ethnic countries. For example, in 1990 and 2010, the Uzbek minority in southern Kyrgyzstan clashed with government-sponsored Kyrgyz gangs. Hundreds were hanged or raped, and the violence displaced over 500,000 people. Troops from Uzbekistan briefly crossed the border to protect its enclaves, showing the potential for internal violence to become international violence. Furthermore, the process of demarcating the new borders caused tensions, because Soviet maps had changed throughout the 20th century, allowing each country to recognize the one that favored them. Nationalism, stoked by authoritarian or populist governments, and neglect for faraway, impoverished frontier regions mean that compromise is rare. Over 1,000 kilometers of borders are yet to be marked, including a third of the Tajikistan-Kyrgyzstan border, which has caused numerous border clashes, including the aforementioned 2022 war. Tensions are further exacerbated by water shortages, which threaten millions of farmers and ranchers in the predominantly agricultural Fergana Valley. Water shortages have gone so severe that farmers are, quote, begging God for water. Between 1961 and 2012, the Tian Shan Mountains, whose snowmelt feeds the rivers that irrigate the valley, have lost more than 27% of their glacier mass due to climate change. Furthermore, crumbling infrastructure from the Soviet era has caused inefficiencies in water usage, especially because closed borders have made international collaboration quite difficult. Farmers have turned to violence to obtain water, and disputes over water rights in unclear borders can lead to riots that escalate into full-scale border skirmishes. In 2021, a fistfight between communities on the Kyrgyzstan-Tajikistan border over cameras at a water facility erupted into a firefight that killed 94 civilians and soldiers. In addition, dams in Kyrgyzstan have restricted the Naran River, leading to water shortages and tensions with downstream Uzbekistan. When Russia and Kyrgyzstan proposed a hydropower dam on the Naran River in 2016, Uzbek president at the time, Islam Karimov, warned that, quote, control over water resources in the republics of Central Asia may lead to a full-scale war. Another large problem that Central Asia faces is that of terrorism. Its geographical location close to Afghanistan has made it vulnerable to spillover. In particular, the Islamic movement of Uzbekistan has proven to be a dangerous threat. Originally intended to create a state of Sharia law in Uzbekistan and feeding off of resentment for Islam Karimov's repressively secular government, it has since spread to neighboring countries and become closer to Al-Qaeda. They launched a raid into southern Kyrgyzstan in 1999 and bombed American and Israeli embassies in Tashkent, Uzbekistan's capital, using Afghanistan as a base of operations. Because the IMU operates across borders, it has fostered tensions, as both Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan have accused Tajikistan of allowing IMU fighters to enter their territory, creating further tensions. After the 2001 American invasion of Afghanistan, however, it was almost completely annihilated, and the remnants merged with the Taliban and later the Islamic State, though terrorism still remains a significant threat to Central Asia. Central Asian tensions have, however, been put in check by foreign powers, especially Russia, which maintained its cultural, economic, and military influence over Central Asia after the collapse of the Soviet Union. It founded the Collective Treaty Security Organization, or CSTO, in 1992, as a military alliance similar to NATO that encompasses most post-Soviet states, giving it the status of a mediator and security guarantor. Russia also set up military bases in Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, Kazakhstan, and until 2012, Uzbekistan, allowing it to step in when it feels like it. Its interventions in the 1992 Tajik Civil War and the January 2022 Kazakhstan unrest show Russia's military dominance over the area, keeping the peace in what it sees as its own backyard. However, Russia's military and economic decline during its 2022 invasion of Ukraine has rather dampened its influence in Central Asia. It has already withdrawn over 1,500 troops from bases in Tajikistan due to manpower shortages, putting into question whether Russia still has the military capabilities to intervene in Central Asia. In addition, Russia has refused to help Armenia against Azerbaijani attacks, despite its treaty obligations, which puts the CSTO in jeopardy. Central Asian governments have begun distancing themselves from Russia by abstaining at the UN or supplying humanitarian equipment to Ukraine. Kazakhstan has also changed its alphabet from Cyrillic to Latin. In 2001, the United States thrust itself into Central Asian politics with an invasion of neighboring Afghanistan. The United States set up military bases in Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan, seeing Central Asia as an indispensable base for its operations in the war on terror. The US kept a lid on Afghan's terrorism and created a government there that was friendly to ethnic minorities such as Tajiks, Uzbeks, and Turkmen in the north of the country. It has also cooperated with governments in the region to train their militaries to fight terrorist threats spilling in from Afghanistan. The US also planned for Central Asia to be a staging ground for future support to the Afghan government's fight against the Taliban after a NATO withdrawal. In 2021, however, Afghanistan fell to the Taliban. The American withdrawal and complete annihilation of the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan shifted American attention away from Central Asia and the war on terror towards Europe and the Indo-Pacific, especially after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. In addition, the Taliban has been unable to establish a stable government and truly defeat the Islamic State's Khorasan province, making the border situation precarious. ISKP has launched numerous rocket attacks against both Uzbekistan and Tajikistan. The Taliban's poor treatment of ethnic minorities has also inflamed tensions, especially with Tajikistan, which continues to support the Republican insurgency against the Taliban, even maybe hosting its leaders. With both Russian and American influence on the decline, many believe that China may step up to dominate this region. China's interest in Central Asia mainly stems from its geographic position. Its Belt and Road Initiative, which seeks to create trade corridors between China and Europe, puts Central Asia center stage as the middleman between the two economic hubs. In fact, one of the first places Xi Jinping visited coming out of the COVID-19 pandemic were Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan. China has poured over $40 billion into Central Asian transportation infrastructure, and its desire for security on the new trade route manifested itself as a small Chinese military base in Tajikistan in 2021. However, it's doubtful that China will truly fill the role of a security guarantor, at least in the short term. The Chinese military is untested, as it has not fought a war since 1979. Despite its base in Tajikistan, China still lacks a large military presence in the area, comparable to what Russia once had, who stationed 7,000 troops in Tajikistan alone. Simply put, China just doesn't have the reputation of military aggression and power that Russia has. In addition, Central Asians are becoming increasingly distrustful of China, mainly because of its genocide against ethnically related Turkic Muslims in Xinjiang. The percentage of Uzbeks who see China favorably has declined from over 77% in 2018 to just 44% in 2021. And 68% of Kazakhs are now opposed to Chinese infrastructure development in their country. Without the support of Central Asia's people, China may just lack the soft power needed to influence it. However, there's definitely hope. With the death of Uzbek President Islam Karimov in 2016, much of the batshitness and Putinness of the Uzbek leadership has gone away. Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan have since signed treaties where Uzbekistan would be compensated for lost water with hydroelectric power. In addition, in 2022, the two countries signed a border agreement on the Andijan Reservoir. Uzbekistan has also begun military cooperation with Tajikistan after the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan. In August 2022, the two countries conducted joint exercises on the Uzbek-Afghan border. Furthermore, both Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan have been able to solve all of their border disputes over the past 2 decades, showing that diplomacy can still prevail in the region. While numerous issues still remain, particularly the Tajikistan-Kyrgyzstan conflict, Uzbekistan's new leadership and improving relations with surrounding countries, as well as previous agreements, give hope for peace and collaboration in the region. The truth is that the days of great power politics in Central Asia may be over. Central Asia may, for the first time in a very, very long time, finally control its own destiny and bring forth a brighter future.